Guys, welcome back to the Scrap Life adult side of the channel where we're going to do another salvage auction evaluation. We're going to run through, break down this vehicle that's about to cross the auction block. And this one's particularly interesting to me, and there's layers to this one. It has a lot of nice modifications, but things get really interesting the deeper you dig on this one. Diving in, this one is going through the Crash Toys Powersport auction, which we don't personally buy a lot of cars from these, but some of the higher end stuff, some of the UTVs, jet skis, dirt bikes, like things along those lines sometimes get grouped in here. The different auction websites kind of promote them a little bit differently, try to, generate higher sales for these higher end vehicles. This R8 really at face value is a really, really nice looking car. The entire driver's side of the car looks to be in pretty good condition. It does have HRE wheels, which is something that is nice to see just from a kind of parts evaluation that somebody put nice higher end aftermarket parts on here. So when you get to the passenger side, you see the damage. And it looks like this thing ran down maybe a guardrail. It's a little bit hard to tell. These two lines right here kind of make me think guardrail, but the mirror is popped off too. So, something a little bit higher would have had to hit that. Who knows? Maybe it was another vehicle that this thing ran down. As we continue scrolling, you can see that there is damage to the hood, the headlight area, the front bumper, the wheel itself took a good impact, side skirt here, down to the door. Now, you look at the front end, pretty much looks pretty squared away, even though we know there's damage here on this side. Getting back to the rear end, everything looks pretty good. You do have the gap here on the quarter panel, but these quarter panels bolt on and bolt off. So if you pull that off because it's damaged anyway, replace the brackets, I would be led to believe that there would be really no reason that that gap wouldn't get filled up with a properly placed quarter panel again. The interior looks pretty good. This right here is interesting to me. And it's possible that when the vehicle was wrecked, somebody put something on the seat. But for the mileage on this car and how new it is, that little bit of wear right there is kind of curious. The cluster powered up, you can see that it's running. You have a TPMS light down here, seatbelts off. You can see that we have a little bit of temperature in both the motor and the transmission. And we have a illuminated warning light here, but it doesn't say anything more as to what that might be. This is where things get interesting, because this picture right here you look at, and you can see this is the arm of the person that's taking the picture and everything. And essentially this looks like a shadow, but this is not a shadow. And we are going to go back here. I'm going to show you the zoomed in version here in HD. We're going to take a look at this. And you can see that is some sort of oil. And it is a decent amount. You can see it is up here on the throttle body. As we come around to the passenger side, you have more of it. And this is the mods that I was talking about. This thing has what appears to be a VF Engineering supercharger on it. And I actually just noticed something else with this car that I didn't before starting this video. If you look all the way back here, that red pulley right there, that should have a belt on it, I believe, and it does not. So that is very, very interesting if indeed that is supposed to have a belt on it and it does not have a belt on it. So I had massive concerns about this car earlier, and now my concerns are even greater, because this car is also listed as having mechanical damage. Now, we got to talk about Copart and then IAA. Those are the two big auction houses that we buy from. I see videos a lot about people talking about, Copart scammed me. You have to understand what Copart is. Copart is the auction platform. What their job is to receive the car, present it as best as possible, but they also don't have history on these cars. Now, don't think I'm sitting here defending Copart. People just need to understand that it is not Copart that is selling the vehicle. It is somebody else that is selling the vehicle through Copart. Copart is merely just trying to represent these. So the person that's checking this car in at Copart might not necessarily know to look at this, which is why you need to, as a buyer, make sure that you do as much research as possible. The first thing that we would do on this car is pull up the auction history, which there is absolutely none of. On IAA's website, you have run videos and you have the benefit of knowing who the seller is. If I'm gonna guess, this looks like a car that would be an insurance company to me, but seeing what I'm seeing in the auction pictures makes me a little bit curious on that. So we went ahead and Googled the VIN to see if anything came up, which is a resource that anybody has access to. And the only thing really is that this car seemingly went through Chicago Motor Cars at some point, which is people that we know. And you can see it looks a little bit different in these pictures. It looks like somebody colored the wheels. You have, VF supercharger, HREs, KW coilovers, which is nice to learn as far as just parts of value on the car. It has a Capristo exhaust, which is expected. You know, with a blower on it, I expected it to have an aftermarket exhaust on it, but it's nice to know what it is because that is a desirable one. It does have a meth injection kit, which I noticed in the pictures. I was curious if that's what that was. So really, really nice modifications on this car. It stinks to see it in this fashion, but it kind of just, you know, is what it is. So getting back to the auction pictures, this is where we see people that make mistakes pretty often, and I think that this car is a good example of it. That I think somebody's going to overpay for this car. I think somebody might have already overpaid for this car based on what I'm seeing. It is pre-bid to $56,000, and why this car piqued my interest is because I am getting very close to fixing a car that I teased earlier on the Audi R8 GT salvage story, which is a Gen 1.5, a 2014 supercharged R8 that I bought from California. And I can't wait to bring that rebuild series to you guys. I'm extremely excited about it. I'm also massively excited about my partner on the project, which is eBay Motors. I couldn't really think of a better partner to have because I need a lot of parts for that specific car. You guys know that we are sellers on eBay Motors, and really it's just going to enable me to repair that car for a lot less money than what I would be able to do using the dealership, buying parts brand new, even with dealer accounts, and you have the right parts, right fit guarantee. But this car, I saw the starting bid and I was like, man, maybe I messed up paying as much as I paid for that car, because this one was pre-bid relatively low, and you know, it could bid another $100,000. You just don't know how it goes. But that's why I started looking into this car, and then I started getting pretty nervous. So you can see that the secondary damage is listed as mechanical. And obviously oil doesn't get up into this area just on its own. Nobody just dumps oil on it. So I started thinking, okay, you know, maybe the actual damage here, because the transcooler is on this side of the car. I thought, okay, maybe the accident caused the transcooler to rupture. It, you know, had a little bit of pressure and it just kind of splattered it all over the engine bay. And the more I look at it though, the amount that's up there, I think that it's entirely possible that this car has a transmission issue. On the turbo cars, we see it a lot actually, that the transmission cooler is on the passenger side of the car. And what happens when you have cars that make more than, it seems like the threshold's right about 800 horsepower, especially if you do a first to second gear shift, the transmissions will basically just explode. They kind of overpressurize. And what happens a lot is the line that runs to the cooler will break down. It'll essentially pop, and it sprays hot oil all over that header on that side of the motor. And we see countless numbers of these higher horsepower cars that don't have built transmissions that burn to the ground because of that. So what my thought is that maybe that's what happened here, and this car got really lucky that it didn't just burn to the ground, but maybe some oil got on that rear tire. Maybe they were, you know, under load and it caused the car to, you know, hook to the right, and then they dragged it either down another car, down a guardrail, as I said. And I think that scenario maybe makes a whole lot of sense. And it stinks because this is an extremely high value car, pre-accident value of $192,000. This was probably an over $200,000 MSRP car. Looks like it has carbon ceramics on it. Really a nice car. Now, I started doing some additional digging because this thing, because it is in this Crash Toys auction, it has additional photos. When you click on the additional photos, you scroll down and they have not a video of it running, but they have pictures of it running. And now my concerns are even greater, because if you look right here, you can see something from behind there. Now, to play devil's advocate, it is possible that what you have here is just oil burning off. Again, if it has a transmission issue and it truly just sprayed oil all over the engine bay, the car's running, it's gonna burn off that fluid. Then you get to this rear shot. And this rear shot is particularly concerning to me because it looks like the smoke is concentrated on the driver's side exhaust and not on the passenger side exhaust, which makes me think that maybe this car has an issue in the motor oil control in some way that is causing the smoke and it's not burning off. Now, here you kind of go down the rabbit hole, because if it has a oiling issue in the motor and there's oil in the engine bay, how much oil is in the motor? You know, if the oil that's in the engine bay came from some sort of failure with the motor and a line popped with engine oil, this thing has to be losing engine oil. So it's also possible that there's multiple issues here, that maybe you have a trans issue and there's a motor issue. Who knows? But this is why I wanted to do this video, is because this is a kind of an extreme example. This is a high value car that somebody's going to pay a lot of money on, but you need to do this kind of research with any salvage auction vehicle that you're looking at, whether it's a $5,000 Camaro or it's a potentially $100,000 Audi R8. You need to look at all of the small details and really kind of go through it with a fine-tooth comb to make sure that the deal is what you think the deal is. Because again, Copart is just presenting this at face value. They're not sitting here, you know, putting the car on a lift and diving into it and looking up auction history like we are. They are presenting what they have from the person that is selling it, and Copart is just a medium for the sale. So this car, I think it's going to get very, very interesting. And we have a little bit of time here before this thing runs at auction, but we are going to check that out here in just a minute, and we're going to see ultimately what it sells for. And this thing is going to be selling, because this is a pure sale car, which means whatever this sells for, it is going down the road. So we're going to see if somebody maybe overpays for this thing and maybe didn't do their research like we just kind of went through. Seems like a lot of money for a Bentley Continental GT with a certificate of destruction and a flood car, but I guess that's probably why it's going overseas. Here we go though, 61,000 starting bid, and it is running, and there are multiple people in here. Oh my goodness. And this is what I kind of thought was going to happen, is that there was going to be fireworks as it's popping up right now. And there's a lot of money in parts in these cars. We haven't done a Gen 2, but there's money in parts, but it makes me wonder how many of these people saw what we already talked about. One thing that I didn't note on earlier is that because these R8s are one big aluminum frame, is that they often sometimes come with certificate of destructions. This one is repairable, so it doesn't have any frame damage. Oh man, Arkansas coming in at the last minute. Texas is upset about that one, I'm sure. Oh, they're gonna double bonus time them? Let's see what Arkansas does here. Oh, that is rough. Oh, you gotta love the games that people play sometimes. That's it. Texas got it. Man, that's a good chunk of change for that car. I'm really curious what the situation is with the car. I can only hope that this video maybe makes its way to whoever bought that in Texas, hoping that it's not that bad. But again, I addressed my concerns. I stated my concerns with what that car was presenting to be, What do you think though? Do you think that that was, 77, I think 77.5 is what it wrapped up at? All in with fees, shipping, I think you're probably looking maybe like 82, something along those lines. Like, what's your thought? Just think about risking north of $80,000 on a car like that has damage that needs to be repaired, potentially major catastrophic drivetrain damage on the car. That's a lot of money to be risking. At least it is for me. I know there are other people in this world that's not a big deal for, and hopefully whoever bought that car, they knew what they were getting into. But I'm curious what you think about the deal on this R8, and definitely if you're into the R8 content, stay tuned on the main channel here. Coming up, we're going to be doing the rebuild on my 2014 supercharged R8. There's tons of fun stuff I have planned for that car, some racing, some road tripping. We're going to be having some fun with it. So thank you for tuning in as always. We appreciate the support. We'll see you in the next video.